Hi, everybody, and welcome to this segment of Epic Experts Interviews. I'm Lori Gambacorda.
And I'm Lisa Byrne, and today our special guests are Rose and Terry Stout from Hokseda Support Services. Rose and Terry utilize holistic therapy, grief recovery, and the indigenous practices of the Incan medicine wheel to help people transform their lives. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
So can you guys start with just like a brief description of what it is that you offer people? What's the transformation that you're actually offering people?
Well, the word Hokseda that we use for the whole enterprise is that Hokseda Support Services, and it's to support people in whole being integration. Hokseda is really a Seneca Indian word, and it means that which is within, without, around, and through. So it's whole being, all parts, all aspects. And in the Inca medicine wheel, the Inca philosophy is that the soul is not something that exists inside a body. The body exists inside this field, which is our whole being.
So what do you do? So Terry has a private practice, private counseling practice, and then we do workshops. We do grief recovery workshops and medicine wheel workshops, and we'd like to say a little bit more about those when it's appropriate. So, but that's the thumbnail sketch.
And I think the bottom line in everything we do is that we work to bring people home to themselves.
That's fantastic. Can you elaborate a little bit more, Rose, than on those pieces of the puzzle? Maybe Terry, you can tell us a little bit about the private practice sessions, and then also how you guys integrate your workshops and work together, and what each of those workshops offer to people.
Which one do you want to do first?
Start with the workshops, I guess.
Okay.
Grief workshop.
Okay. So we'll talk about the grief workshop. They're 3-day workshops, and we keep them small. We have a maximum of 6 people, so that makes them very intimate and personal. They can be intense at times, but also really joyful at times, and we call it living joyfully again. So one thing we wanted to mention to people is that when you see our ad in Epic magazine and it says grief workshop, I think a lot of times people think that well, that's not for me because I'm not grieving the loss of anyone right now. I'm not going through a divorce. I still have my job. But I like to tell people that really these workshops are for everybody. I really believe that because we all carry grief, unresolved grief. We've all been wounded as children. Maybe we had an emotionally absent parent, or we've been bullied, or we lost a friend that unexpectedly, as both children and adults, we have all these things that happen to us, and our society basically gives us the message, sweep it under the rug and keep going. And so because of those messages that we've all gotten our whole lives, we carry all this still. We're probably not conscious of it, but we carry it and it affects us. So in this workshop, we have people identify what all these woundings are, which is a big task, but it's really informative to see in one place, these are all the things that have happened to me and that I'm probably still carrying. And they've set up patterns. And so a lot of our thoughts and behaviors and our reactions to current situations are colored by this unresolved happening in our past. And so the workshop brings that out for everyone. Awareness is like the first step in starting to transform and heal some of these wounds. So that's a big part of what we do. If someone is in the workshop because they are actively grieving a death or something, we obviously work with that also. But I think people come out of it with much more than they thought they were going to get because of what we ask them to do and what comes out, and especially the awareness that comes out for people. The groups are really lovely. They're supportive of each other. They're synergistic. But if people don't want to be in a group and go through this work, Terry also offers that in his private practice to do this process one-on-one with a person or with a couple who might be having trouble with their relationship. It's really powerful for a couple to do the work together. So that's a quick summary of one aspect of our grief workshop that's important.
I think it's amazing that you guys are doing this work. I know in my life personally, grief has probably been my greatest teacher. And I know that it is so important for us to have supportive people and facilitators and leaders that are open-hearted and can hold that container and space, and that grief becomes cumulative, you know, if we don't work through it. So thank you for what you guys are doing.
That triggers me to say something else, something more along those lines, that we in this society are never taught how to grieve. It's something that it's kind of a taboo subject. And we get all of these phrases to keep us from doing that. There's a difference between grief recovery and grief counseling. There's a lot of grief counseling out there. And I did 12 and a half years of grief counseling until my daughter died. And then none of that helped me. So I had to learn. That's when I discovered grief recovery as opposed to grief counseling. And it's learning. Grief counseling is holding a vessel for you to tell your story in, which is the first part of grief recovery. And it's important. But it's not enough. You need to learn the skills on how to move through that process and come out the other side. And that's every time it arises too, because there's no such thing as closure. It's just completion of every time the process comes up. And it's so important because it really holds us back from being able to engage in life fully until we do that. So basically we've got a passion for it.
Thank you for that distinction. It's, I think, you know, very important that people can understand there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the influences? You mentioned the death of your own daughter. I'm sure that was a big influence, and the Inca medicine wheel. Like, how did some of those things come in? How did they influence you coming together and offering these kinds of workshops?
Okay. The medicine wheel, I think I'd like to say something about that first. That we came across the Inca medicine wheel when we took a journey down to Peru, and we actually, in our finding each other in a different way later in life, and we came together, we found out that we both always wanted to go to Machu Picchu. And we looked for a way to do that. And the way we found to do that was to join this expedition that was going to the Sacred Valley of the Inca. And in order to go on this expedition, we had to begin studying the medicine wheel because we were going to be with 5 Inca elders. That's what started the whole thing. And then the medicine wheel itself, when I saw it from my perspective as a psychological model, it blew me away. Because it's depth psychology at an experiential level. It's brilliant, just ancient wisdom that's just brilliant. So that has actually become my framework for all of the therapy I do with people. It's all built around this model. And the model, it starts in the south and goes clockwise around the wheel. And each direction has an archetype and a psychological task that you need to perform before you move around the wheel. The archetype just symbolically represents those psychological tasks. In the South, interestingly enough, is grief recovery. All those traumas and woundings and pains and things that have been unhealed in our life, and they need to be looked at and transformed in some way so that your relationship to them can change so that they're not informing you on a subconscious level. And then once you learn the skills of that work, then you move around to the West where you're addressing fears and generational dysfunctions, all those messages that you got from your family of origin. all those nagging little voices that keep telling you what to do. And then once you address all of those things, that leaves you free then to learn the skills, which is the north direction of how to manifest your dreams, how to dream what it is you want to bring into reality in your life, into being. And then once you learn how to do that, once you learn how to choose your own destiny, then you take that out to the world and you become a participant in the healing of the world. That's basically the medicine wheel. So everybody who walks through my door for personal counseling gets all of that, whether they know it or not.
And you start with the grief.
I start with the grief because
yeah.
So that came about in a couple of ways. One is that when I was in my master's program, I did my second internship for the master's program with people that had life-threatening illnesses. Now, these are people that are dying. And so they had no time for bullshit. They needed to cut straight to the chase. I had good teachers. The counseling program was wonderful, but traditional counseling is like watching paint dry. So they didn't have time for that. And so because of that, I took on hypnotherapy, which is deeper and quicker and more permanent, and added that into the mix of what I do. And then fast forward to 1999, I had a daughter die, and that was huge for me. I mean, it was kind of like a satori. There was no place I could go. I was with her for 5 days in her dying process, and that opened me up, and it gave me a different consciousness, and I engaged in life in a completely different way. And then, so that and traveling with the elders after that all came together to form kind of what we do.
And they're tied together because the grief recovery, the workshop itself really goes in depth, but it's also the first step in the medicine wheel. So they are kind of tied together because the deeper you can go to transform all of your wounding, the freer you are to live life. And if you're in the medicine wheel workshop, then to go on to look at other things about how you can, be who you want to be and dream your world into being, your own world into being. So the medicine wheel goes much further into those aspects of, your own personal becoming and then taking it out to the world, but they're tied together in that whole grief part.
And once you go around the wheel and you've done all of these things, there's a center to it. And there's a whole different piece about dropping into that center. It's that place that is not in linear time, it's circular time. And it's really where you go to get in touch with your true self in your heart in, a different way of engaging. So that's an ultimate goal for us anyway.
And the wisdom of the Inca, it's ancient indigenous culture. And so their ancient wisdom, it's their prophecy now to bring their knowledge forward and share it with people who are open to hearing it. And yet it also corresponds to some of the, cutting edge thinking in science today, the quantum physics. It's amazing how their understanding and use of energy and what you can do with that is very similar to the quantum physics. And so it's kind of proving what they always knew. And so it's wonderful to be involved in this ancient wisdom and look at what we really can manifest in our lives, apart from what we've been told we can. We try to think everything into being, but there's other ways to manifest your dreams. So it's really interesting and powerful work.
And I'd like to say one more thing about my private practice. When people come to see me, regardless of what their presenting problem is, I see everybody who walks through the doors having unresolved grief. So I always start there. We have to start there to heal and transform those things so that our relationship to everything else can change. And I bring in the hypnotherapy as one of the tools. I bring in EMDR as a way of addressing the physiological aspects of those memories that are stored in our cells and in our nervous system. But those are just tiles in a mosaic, the whole overall mosaic. The biggest thing that I bring is I don't offer medications and I don't offer magic wands. I'm not there to fix anybody. What I'm there to do one-on-one is to enter into a relationship with them where we can walk down a road together, where we walk down that path for as long as it's necessary, entering into a relationship that's all heart-based. So that's the bottom line for me, is heart-based.
All of these services sound amazing, and you had talked a little bit about the container for the grief workshops and how there's only 6 people. What does the Ink and Medicine Wheel look like, and how do people? Well, just start with that. Let us know a little bit about what that looks like, and then maybe some avenues of how people could realize that one or both of these or your private services could support them, and what are the kind of things that maybe come up in somebody's life and they say, wow, this is something that could be really powerful for me to experience.
Well, as far as people seeking private counseling, we live in a collective consciousness in this society where one of the foundations or the pieces of that collective consciousness is the belief that we are victims, that we are the effect of a cause. And as long as people are coming from that perspective, then they're all externally focused. So for me, the main goal of the private therapy would be to get them in touch with what's inside, so that they can become inner reference, so that they are no longer victims of a circumstance or the effect of a cause, but they are the recipients of something that may be painful, but that doesn't have to define who they are. That's the very basic for people who aren't more aware of their inner landscape, is to bring them to that inner landscape.
Yeah, you asked about the medicine wheel. Again, we limit it to 6 people. We hold both of these workshops in a wooden yurt on our property up in the forest. So it's a beautiful setting to do this work. But we do limit it for the medicine wheel. With the medicine wheel, we either do a 6-day intensive training that covers all the directions, or we do 4 weekends a year, 1 weekend per direction. So that's how they could choose which way they want to do it. And with the medicine wheel workshop, there's a lot more experiential work than the grief workshop. It attracts people, I think, that really want to do more work and that value indigenous wisdom, which has a lot to do with nature. I mean, that's all they had back then was, where they lived, which was Mother Earth. So there's experiential work that happens outdoors, and
there's a lot of symbolic and energetic work that goes into the medicine wheel, which is going a little bit beyond what most people are used to. So, you got the people that walk in the door because they're having trouble in their relationships, or maybe they have grief from somebody, or lost their job, or go through, and so they're more focused on the external circumstances of their life. But for people who want to go deeper, who want to go into a different consciousness and a different awareness and a different energetic, the medicine wheel offers all of those things. It goes into circular time and fifth dimension, and rites and ceremonies that drive things to a deeper level because of the experience.
You want to talk about monkeys?
Monkeys. So
Briefly.
Monkeys. I'm all about monkeys. I love creating monkeys. And that comes from the story of the 100th monkey. There was a group of scientists on an island that were studying monkeys, and they noticed that they dug up their potatoes and ate them, dirt and all. So they set about teaching these monkeys how to wash their potatoes in the stream before they ate them, so they could be eating clean food. And when the 100th monkey learned the process of washing their potatoes, all of the monkeys on another island who didn't have scientists teaching them this started washing their potatoes. And that's the idea of the tipping point, the quantum leap, where you get to a certain point where the collective consciousness starts behaving in a different way. And according to the quantum physicists in this world today, the leaders out there, they say that it only takes the square root of like 1 or 2% of the entire population to reach that tipping point of thinking in a different consciousness. And while I'm on that, I just like to say this because of the times that we're in. The coronavirus has locked people up, and that causes a lot of issues. There's a lot of fear out there. People don't know how to get to themselves, so they're not comfortable being in their own company. And they have all these fears, and they're so attached to outer circumstances that they don't know how to enjoy the inner landscape. And during this time, because there's so much fear going on out there, I think the most important thing that any of us can do who have a little different perspective is to step into the energy of that and the practice of that. It's what heart math calls coherence in the heart. You go to the deepest place of your heart, and being in that energy can bring that energy out to the collective consciousness, which is going to counterbalance the fear that's going on right now. I just had to say that.
Well, and that's one reason we bring up monkeys is because, we try to, without people knowing it, create monkeys, create people who have this desire to shift the collective consciousness, who see all of the fear and the negativity. And so, the people Terry works with in his practice, or the people that come to the grief workshop, we talk a lot about how each of us individually influences the collective consciousness. And luckily we get a lot of pretty conscious people coming through and maybe coming out as a result, a little bit more conscious. So we're all about creating monkeys.
So here's one of our graduates. This is the 100th monkey. And he's got a little Inca hat on too.
That might be your new ad, spend a weekend with us and become a monkey. I mean,
Right.
Okay, there you go.
Get some more profiles right away. People are like, what is monkeys about?
Yeah, go see.
There's so much richness and so much depth in what we're talking about. So many different threads we could follow for the conversation. But I want to ask you, you're expending energy, holding that space for people. So what is it that the two of you do for yourselves to make sure that you're always growing and you're always maintaining your own energy field and making sure that, as people's needs change, that you're able to kind of be open and accommodate what it is that they need? So what are some of your own practices?
Well, for my continuing education, which I think is different maybe than what you're asking, I go back once a year and teach level 5 and 6 hypnotherapy to international students. And that feeds me a great deal because these people from all over the world, I feel like I'm a citizen of the world and we're all family. I get a tremendous amount out of that. But then on the other hand,
I go outdoors a lot, and luckily I'm being able to do that even more, being at home and really trying to, establish a deeper relationship with the earth and the outdoors. And that really feeds me. I mean, that's, and bringing myself more and more still. I don't have, an ongoing meditation practice or anything like that, but being outdoors just really does feed me. And I think, the people that we see in our workshops also, if you're, as far as increasing our knowledge or awareness, I think, they really broaden and deepen our understanding of issues that people have. And so in a way, there are teachers to be involved with, the really personal aspects of how people are, what the issues are for people and how they're dealing with it. That helps us to help other people.
I'd like to interject there that when we do our workshops, we are not facilitators. We bring our education and our experience and our life stories, and most of all, we bring our hearts to everything we do, but we're not just the facilitators, we are the participants also. So like when we do grief workshops, people share their lost histories and we share ours. So by the time you walk out of one of those workshops, we're all family. We all know as much about each other. So we don't believe in those kinds of separations, the clinical distance, quote unquote. We're human beings walking this path together. And I think that every time we do that with any of our groups, it feeds us and it grows us and it changes us and it transforms us. And it's all a process that's dynamic and ongoing, that's heart-based. And that's continuous education.
And I think heart-based is something that we strive for. And, we have our relationship and our woundings, that we still work with at times. And so I think we're striving to remind each other and to work individually ourselves on, okay, my mind's going way over here and take me down this rabbit hole. I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to bring it, back into my heart space and heal it from there or work with it from there. So I think both of us do a lot of individual work constantly kind of on ourselves to try to put into practice what we believe.
And because we know each other's lost histories so well, we can bring that up whenever one or the other of us gets knocked off balance because our mind is chasing its tail. We can remind each other and do it in a way that's not being defensive or adversarial. It's just lovingly saying, oh, there's that again. yeah, we see that. And so it's really a dynamic that has made our relationship wonderful. That's why we work so well together in our groups.
That's fantastic. And the group dynamic, there's just a whole nother level of profound experience and energetic that you get when you're in a group. So it's super important work what you guys are doing. And I know that you've also, besides doing the retreats, have taken people on spiritual travel. If you want to maybe speak to that a little bit of how that started and what type of offerings you have.
After we got our maces, it's a spiritual bundle from the Incas, their tradition. We joined a group of people. It was an international group who every year somewhere in the world would hold vigil fires for world peace. And so we did that for some time. We loved doing those travels. And then out of that, people kept asking us to take them to Peru. And we kept saying, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to herd cats. But eventually we gave in and did. And so a couple of years ago, we took a whole group of people down to Peru into the Sacred Valley. And we had guides and Inca elders with us, to provide that same experience. And that was fabulous. I mean, that was one of the most wonderful trips. And then last year, from the hypnotherapy class, we had a student who came from Guam to do our medicine wheel workshop and grief recovery, and it just a friendship grew. And long story short, at the end, this woman was Japanese living in Guam, and she wanted to do a journey for Japan and have a vigil fire there, which included a 4-day retreat. And so we joined with her, and we marketed and brought in all the participants, and she set everything up over in Japan. And that was, I think, the trip of a lifetime for us. Just so much in depth and so much east meets west rather than north and south. It wasn't so much the eagle and the condor, it was the east and west.
Those were both really wonderful trips. It's not our purpose, unfortunately, because they were wonderful trips. And we had people in Peru and in Japan, setting up all those aspects of the trips. So, we brought the people and we co-facilitated the whole journey. But it's not something that we're really planning on continuing. But we're also starting to change our focus a little bit. We'll continue to have our in-depth workshops, but with this Japanese woman, we're co-authoring a book with her that about the medicine wheel that she wants to translate into Japanese and make available in Japan. And she actually has a series of 3 books planned that we're going to participate in. And we're also trying to come into the new age, and we're going to be doing a webinar. My aginess.
Series of webinars.
Yeah, a series of webinars on kind of extracting a lot of the teachings that we have out of the grief recovery and the medicine wheel, but they're not the grief recovery or the medicine wheel. They're all the teachings that help people come home to themselves. And so it's going to be a webinar series that has just like little chapters or whatever of this topic, that topic. And because those are also valuable beyond doing the actual grief work or the actual medicine wheel teachings, is some of the other stuff that we bring in, that from our reading, from our knowledge, that really does help drive home to people how they can be in the world in a different way than we've been taught by our society. It's giving people a lot more empowerment than they have had. So that's what that webinar series is going to be about. So we're excited about that. We've been doing the workshops for many years, and we see it as a way to, branch out and affect more people than just the people who can be in Durango in a workshop.
Yep, I think there are many.
Yeah. Say it.
I said we also dance hula. Yeah.
So why do you say that?
Well, because that's a way that we practice whole being integration, because hula dancing is coming from the heart and giving expression to a story from your heart. So that's whole being integration too.
And we've experienced it and seen it, and it's wonderful. So thank you for offering it.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And enriching.
Yeah.
So one of our interesting questions is, if you could go back in time and you could visit, a younger version of yourself, knowing everything that you know now, what advice would you give your younger selves?
I would tell my younger self to not care so much about what people think of you, because I grew up being the nice girl, the perfect child, the perfect wife in the first marriage, and it really affected me to not be able to express who I am and what I think. Was years in the making, and so I would say, be yourself and don't worry about what people are going to think of who you are. That would be my advice.
I think mine would be pretty much the same. I was one of those kids who was bullied on the schoolyard, and it hurt me a lot. And I really defined my experience in life by what other people were doing, either to me or around me. And I think in some ways that helped me really get in touch with who I was. So my advice to my younger self would be to anchor myself in the knowing of who I was, rather than what was going on outside of me.
So we'll go the opposite end of the spectrum now, and if you can go forward 5 or 10 years, what would you both like to see as your biggest achievement or contribution to your community and humanity in general?
So I would say that my goal would be to create as many monkeys as possible. I would love to, that's my whole focus, is bringing people home to themselves. And in the Inca philosophy, they say it's not that you look to the future or you source from the future, you bring the future through your past into your present. It's like it's in circular time. So you just live that energy now, and that becomes the whole focus. Is not what's going to happen in the future, but what you can offer right now that will turn things into fertile soil from which something new can grow.
I think just, for me, seeing individual people awaken and let go of things that have held them back, and knowing that as an individual person grows and expands, then that affects the whole collective. And so we're kind of like one person at a time. But that's the end goal. The end goal is to help individual people and thereby help the world. And I really think there's a huge connection there. So that's what we've been doing.
It seems like, of course, we all have to start within, and that ripples outward. I just want to say thank you for your presence and your authenticity. It's really wonderful to get to know you a little better, and the people watching this will get to know you a little better. And it is such deep and profound work, and I want to just give a very heartfelt gratitude and appreciation for how you're showing up in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for the opportunity to, tell a little bit more of what it is we do and love doing. So we appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you for Epic.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
We love Epic.
Yeah. It's wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And
So you two are.
second what Lori said about, just the container and the space and the offerings that you have for people to go deeper and to connect internally, to bring out their own wisdom, their own balance, their own gifts, all of those kinds of things. So thank you guys so much for the work you're doing. Can you let people know, how they can connect with you? What's the best way to learn more about you and ways they can connect with you?
To learn more about us, they can go onto our website, www.hokseda.com.
And that's HOKSEDA, hokseda.com.
And then beyond that, I'd say the most direct and simplest way to connect with non-technical people is to call us. Call or text. You'll get an immediate response. So my phone number is 903-7578.
No,
that's hers. Excuse me. Mine is 946-1438. Both 970.
And our email and our phone number is on our website. So.
But email is not the best way. It's better to call or text first rather than email, because we just have too many emails.
But if they want to,
if
they want to, they can.
Perfect. Is there any last thing that you would like to impart to everyone listening?
I'd just say drop into your heart and stay there. From that place comes all the wisdom you need.
Ditto.
That's beautiful. Thank you again both so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So if people want to get in touch with Rose and Terry Stout, again, it's hokseda.com. The information will be below the video. And you can also visit epicmag.org to learn more about empowering people, inspiring community. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much.